75 cents. That's a lot of money. And in a year's time, that'd come to, see, there's 52 weeks in a year.
It comes to around $40 a year.
Picture this. Tiny Opie and Andy taking a leisurely walk to the lake as everyone knows the music. The ideal slice of life in a tiny town, if you will. But what if the tranquil introduction concealed truths that the majority of viewers failed to perceive? Stories that expose a messier, more profound, and even tragic reality are hidden underneath the grins and simple delights. Today, we're going to go into the things the show intentionally left out. Injuries that happened on set, relationships that weren't meant to be, and the silent suffering that unfolded while the cameras were running. Get ready to view Mayberry from a fresh perspective. You won't be able to unhear these hidden facts again. Pick one episode from The Andy Griffith Show that you would want to keep, if you could only keep one. The pickle story was the obvious choice for Don Knotts, and he agreed with the fans that it was one of the funniest episodes of all time. Why was it so memorable? Think about it. Aunt Bee is so proud of herself that she whips up a massive batch of homemade pickles. The one and only issue? She has no idea how bad they taste. In an effort to save her feelings, Andy and Barney wind up eating the horrible pickles while acting as if they adore every mouthful. A comical showdown of expressions, phony grins, and outlandish justifications ensues. The world belonged to Don Knotts. The incident was hilarious due to his extreme emotions, uncomfortable pauses in speech, and characteristic Barney-style fear. Don liked it too, so it wasn't only a favorite among fans. Even though he struggled to maintain a straight face throughout takes, he eventually confessed that filming it provided him true delight. What a strange turn of events that a pickle could cause to escalate into one of the funniest moments in television history. The best is still to come. George Lindsay, a guy whose heart was larger than Alabama, was behind Goober Pyle's endearing, silly smile. George utilized his position to achieve something considerably more impactful, helping others, even though millions loved his down-to-earth comedy on The Andy Griffith Show. George Lindsay has donated over $1,000 to the Alabama Special Olympics through his yearly celebrity weekend and golf tournament. Envision this: a guy who built his fortune in comedy dedicated decades of his life to ensuring that disabled children could experience the joy of performing. Not because he wanted praise, but because he cared. George did it. He continued to be deeply committed to helping others, even when his acting career waned. His impact on people's life extends much beyond his time on television. He died in 2012 at 83 years of age. No matter the episode, Barney Fife appeared to have walked out of the same setting. Ever thought about that? Apparently, that wasn't an accident. Don Knotts wore the identical red bow tie, salt and pepper checkered coat, and white straw fedora for years because he adored his character's appearance. However, it was not limited to that program. You can see him wearing the outfit in several of his films, including How to Frame a Fig, The Reluctant Astronaut, The Incredible Mr. Limpet, The Ghost and Mr. Chicken, and How to Frame a Fig. Like an old friend coming along for the ride, the recognizable ensemble would reappearance on screen time and again. Why was he clinging to it with such intensity? Perhaps it brought back a memory of a moment when the actors, script, and audience were all in perfect harmony. Maybe the costume was just an integral part of who he was. Whatever the case may be, it ended up serving as a lucky charm. The passing of a legend is a cause for global mourning and reflection. But fans were shocked not just by the news of Andy Griffith's death in 2012 at the age of 86, but also by how quickly everything had transpired. Just hours after Andy died away, his family decided to bury him in a modest and peaceful ceremony. There will be no elaborate ceremony or queue of mourners. On the contrary, he was swiftly laid to rest on Roanoke Island. which is situated on the picturesque coast of North Carolina and was his home. Give me a break. Andy reportedly wanted it that way. In spite of his notoriety, he was an introvert. His only desire, even in death, was to be left alone. The public accolades from Hollywood stars, long-standing admirers, and friends who had worked with him on screen did not start flowing in until after his funeral. Now we may turn our attention to the opening scene. You most likely have a vivid memory of the scene. Little Opie, holding a fishing rod, throws a pebble into the lake as Andy whistles next to him. It became one of the most memorable pictures in television history, despite its simplicity and purity. The fact, though, is that Opie never even set foot in the sea. That flip? It went wide. Actually, the rock was far from the lake. Careful observation reveals that what you actually witnessed were two pebbles whizzing across the sky. The youngest, Ron Howard, did his best and submitted the first. To make it appear as though Opie's throw landed precisely, a production worker off-camera threw the second, more understated one. It's one of those underappreciated behind-the-scenes tricks that made TV magic, and nobody ever noticed. There was an incident off-camera that nearly ruined Season 2 production. Andy Griffith's hand was fractured as he slammed a wall in a moment of rage. This isn't exactly the way Mayberry acts, is it? Writers snuck in a brief explanation instead of pausing production, saying that Sheriff Taylor hurt himself while pursuing criminals. The plot suddenly included Andy's bandaged hand. The fact that they managed to conceal it so well and so few people even noticed is crazy. The sitcom had a reputation for being soothing and endearing, yet beyond that veneer, viewers may feel genuine emotions at moments. Did you ever notice that Barney Fife was often bursting into anxious babble, yet Andy Taylor maintained his composure the whole time? Don Knotts was also cognizant of it, and he was not fond of it. Andy Griffith's tendency to take himself too seriously was something that Don frequently complained about. Light-hearted chemistry, not serious lessons, was what made the event magical in Don's view. Don enjoyed it most when they embraced the humor, even if Andy had an innate talent for doling out comforting, fatherly counsel. The comedic element, in his opinion, was the beating heart of Mayberry. Sometimes, tensions arose behind the scenes in the creative process due to this preference gap. Since he was the show's namesake, Andy felt obligated to give the story substance. On the other hand, Don, who is always looking for a good laugh, wanted the program to maintain its light-hearted tone. The idea that two performers who created magic together might have such divergent perspectives is intriguing. Maybe the fact that it was a serious and a humorous one is what made it successful. Was the relationship between Helen Crump and Sheriff Andy Taylor only an act? Not exactly. Unbeknownst to the audience, things became slightly more intimate behind the scenes. Playing Helen Crump, Annetta Corsaut was once Andy Griffith's real-life sweetheart, in addition to Andy Taylor's on-screen love interest. Subtly developing behind the scenes, their on-screen relationship extended into real life. The catch, though, is that Andy was already married when this happened. This secret affair brought an extra degree of drama and mystery to the making of the program, even though he and his wife did end up divorcing. In spite of this, Andy and Annetta maintained their friendship even after the show finished. Despite the bumps along the road, many feel their bond was real and profound. Would you be able to watch The Andy Griffith Show if Andy Griffith weren't there? It nearly came to pass, if you can believe it. You might be surprised to learn that Andy Griffith contemplated stepping down from his major role in the early seasons. Don Knotts' performance as Barney Fife was the showstopper as the series progressed. People really adored him, and rather than seeing it as a threat, Andy welcomed it, going so far as to urge the authors to give Barney additional lines. While everyone else was focusing on the show, Andy began to question whether it would be better off without him. The series, in his mind, had always been about more than just Sheriff Taylor. He considered just walking away and allowing someone else take center stage for a little. Fortunately, he stayed, and the show's success was due to the perfect blend of Don Knotts' untamed energy and his steady, composed demeanor. When you were 6 years old, what were you up to? Perhaps you're still figuring out how to tie your shoes, or are taking an ABC class. Well, Opie Taylor's Ron Howard was already a formidable opponent among the more seasoned performers, and he had memorized every line, not just his own. Oh my God! It was obvious he wasn't your ordinary child actor the second he set foot on the Mayberry set. His timing was impeccable, his work ethic was second to none, and his memory was second to none. It astounded the directors. Most kids his age had trouble sitting still, but Ron never lost his composure and would patiently wait for his cue, even going so far as to remind his fellow actors when they were about to speak. Because Andy Griffith was so taken with Ron, he treated him with the respect he deserved, on and off camera. Andy frequently gushed over Ron's innate skill and calm professionalism in interviews, stating that Ron exhibited these traits from an early age. The key was not innate ability, but also self-control. Even if he wasn't always on top of the larger plots, Ron never shrugged off his responsibilities. On screen, Andy Taylor was the cool, collected sheriff, but in real life, he was completely irreverent. In particular, Andy enjoyed making fun of Don Knotts and the rest of his co-stars. Don was actually rather composed in real life, in contrast to his portrayal of the anxious Barney Fife. To no one's surprise, Andy therefore made it his goal to frighten him. On one occasion, when Don was sleeping, Andy and George Lindsay, who portrayed Goober, filled his room with duck guts, all for laughs. Hated it? Just a tiny bit. Too funny. Of course. But Don exacted his vengeance. One season's finale saw the actors returning Andy's stolen moccasins, which they had bronzed as a trophy. Thanks for being such a good sport was their way of expressing it. What's more impressive than a cohesive cast? An ensemble that takes joy in making light-hearted jokes. Could this light-hearted connection be the show's secret ingredient for enduring popularity? In the episode, there was a relationship between Sheriff Taylor and Helen Crump, and you might remember it. Word on the street is that the chemistry continued long after the cameras stopped rolling. Reportedly, Andy Griffith and Annetta Corsawat, who played Helen, dated outside of work as well. One little catch is that Andy was already married when this happened. The backstage drama is really killing it. Their on-screen romance was innocent and charming, but their real-life relationship may have caused some serious friction. It gets better. One day, while playing the role of a waiter, a member of the team inadvertently filmed Andy and Annetta in the midst of an intimate moment in his hotel room. How uncomfortable must that have been? It begs the question, how frequently do relationships in media actually materialize in real life? I was wondering how the other actors in the show felt about it. Unfortunately for Andy Griffith, not every TV pair clicks. The village pharmacist and Andy's love interest Ellie Walker was originally played by Eleanor Donahue on The Andy Griffith Show. She stayed for a single season before leaving. Why? On screen, Eleanor claims that she and Andy were completely unrelated. Exactly nothing. Andy came clean later on that he was awkward during the entire process of filming the love sequences. It seems he wasn't prepared to take the role of a love lead, even if he was America's favorite sheriff. Andy's vulnerability was on full display in his admission, which is unusual to hear from a celebrity. Scenes including Opie's parenting, humor, or drama would be no problem for him, but romance? He was vulnerable in that area. Would you have thought Ellie's presence would have altered the show's tone? Or had Helen Crump been the ideal choice all along? You might be surprised to hear this, but the actress who performed the role of the lovable Aunt Bee didn't really like humor. The actress Frances Bavier, who played the iconic role, was not a fan of the silly antics seen on sitcoms and favored quieter roles. What gave her the opportunity to be in one of the most legendary sitcoms of all time? Did it have anything to do with the money, the celebrity, or something else, totally? You'd think the real-life counterpart of an actor who portrayed a kind cookie-baking role would be as kind, wouldn't you? You never knew what to expect from Frances Bavier. Members of the cast claim that when she wasn't acting, she wasn't nearly as positive. She had 12 cats, was lonely most of the time, and hated having lunch with the others. Siler City, North Carolina residents said she was reclusive and somewhat enigmatic because she lived alone in a massive home. The community and her supporters adored her despite her reclusiveness. The news that Frances had been Aunt Bee startled many of her neighbors when she died away. She was quite discreet about her private life. The majority of people believed it was the end of the Andy Griffith Show. A new chapter, Mayberry RFD, began in the aftermath of the series' September 23, 1968 airing. It didn't quite live up to the original, but it did keep the Mayberry town alive from 1968 until 1971, although with a somewhat different cast and attitude. Has Mayberry RFD ever held its enchantment for you, or did you ever have the impression that something was lacking? Occasionally wondered which episodes the actors enjoyed the most? The fact that Barney's first car so aptly showcased Don Knotts' eccentric genius is likely why Andy Griffith once claimed it was his favorite. However, Ron Howard chose The Ball Game because it was written by his real-life dad, Rance Howard, and it had a personal meaning to him. What a lovely thing. Out of all the episodes, which one did you find most memorable? How do your preferences compare to theirs? Here's something out of the ordinary. The Andy Griffith Show didn't just go. It ended its run at the top of the charts. At the time of its cancellation in April 1968, it had the highest Nielsen rating. Only Seinfeld and I Love Lucy have achieved that feat in television history, so you may consider yourself a member of an exclusive club. The program first aired in October 1960 and went from black and white to color as time went on. Surprisingly, Andy said it was more reminiscent of the Roaring Twenties than the 60s. Is nostalgia the true explanation for its immense popularity, in your opinion? Barney Fife was an integral part of the Andy Griffith Show. It nearly came to pass. On the first day, Don Knotts arrived up without a contract in hand. No promises. I will not make any guarantees. This may have been our only encounter with Barney had Andy's chemistry not been so electrifying. His rapid impact on the producers led to a 1-year contract and a subsequent 5-year extension. You have to ask, how would the concert have turned out if Don hadn't brought his jittery energy and crazy eyes to the stage? If you remember, Andy and Barney had a reliable squad vehicle. The best part was that they were able to get a free brand-new Ford Galaxy from the local dealership every season. In return, the show would bring back the automobile from the previous year, which the dealer would then refinish and sell as if nothing had transpired. 10 separate Galaxies passed through Mayberry throughout the years. Number 10. Even now, you may find fans who have painstakingly recreated the show's automobiles and drive them around town. In a perfect world, would you be the one to pilot a Mayberry police car? In addition to making people laugh, Andy Griffith made an indelible impression on television history. A star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame and an induction into the Television Hall of Fame are among the significant accolades bestowed upon him. Beyond that, he became a beloved celebrity of his era. He was remarkable due to his humble demeanor and subtle charisma. Although he didn't intend to, Don Knotts walked away. This one might catch you off guard. Instead of drama or an argument, a pleasant discussion was the catalyst for Don Knotts' departure from the Andy Griffith Show. It was initially Andy's intention to tell Don that the program would only last for 5 years. As a result, Don inked a 3-year agreement with Universal Pictures when their respective 5-year contracts expired. Don had already made other arrangements when Andy eventually agreed to continue the concert. Originally, Andy and Barney were meant to be written as real-life relatives, cousins. However, following the pilot, the authors scrapped that plan and instead made them childhood buddies. But their relationship was strong, and it revealed something more about the importance of family and community in small towns. It was a jab at the way some people in small, close-knit southern communities got government employment through personal connections. You may have seen a man who appeared on the broadcast many times without saying a word. Mr. Schwamp was that guy. He would often be seen in the background, perched on a bench, or observing town happenings, with his sleek black hair that gave the impression of being a toupee. When Andy or Barney would occasionally address him as, "Hello, Mr. Schwamp," he would simply nod or grin. His identity remained a mystery. Did he have a backstory that went untold, or was he only a running joke? Helen Crump is worth discussing while we are on the subject of enigmatic topics. She was never meant to fit the mold of an ordinary character. She was only cast for a single appearance. However, the authors couldn't stop casting Anita Kursaut since she was fantastic in the part and had fantastic chemistry with Andy. She became an indelible part of the program over time. Have you ever wondered how many of your beloved characters were originally meant to disappear? The program was an integral part of Ron Howard's upbringing. He didn't merely grow up on it. The real-life connection between Andy and Opie was influenced by his father, Rance Howard, who was a writer and worked behind the scenes. Ron has stated that his father's treatment of him as a child inspired many of the on-screen events. For what reason, therefore, did the moments involving Andy and Opie seem so real and touching? Few people are aware of this, but there was a severe lack of diversity in the cast of The Andy Griffith Show. Black performers made occasional cameo appearances, but they were largely in supporting parts. After Rockne Tarkington made an appearance in Opie's piano lesson, where he did more than simply stand in the background, the first black actor to have a speaking part on the whole show, things started to change. Stroke struck actor Howard McNear, who played Floyd the Barber while filming was underway. Because of this, he could not move around freely and could not stand for extended periods of time. The authors didn't give up on Floyd either. They just began filming sequences with him sitting in his barber chair or loosely leaning on various pieces of furniture, walls, or even door frames. Little did the majority of viewers know that theme song that plays at the beginning of each episode, "The Fishing Hole," is the name of one of the most famous theme tunes ever written for television. The irony is that Everett Sloane wrote all of the lyrics. The producers saw something obvious. Whistling, it seemed right, after Earl Hagen and Herbert Spencer recorded it with singing. It complemented the show's small-town atmosphere admirably and was both calming and catchy. Has Barney ever mistakenly called Andy Ann instead of Andy ever occurred to you? It wasn't an accident. Don Knotts came up with the moniker on his own. While shooting, he dropped the Andy Griffith and started using the shorter Ann instead. He frequently used it in character and on set because he enjoyed the way it sounded so nice and easygoing. You have to ask, how many additional subtle tweaks did the performers use to make the film their own? Was it a coincidence that Mayberry and Mount Airy were both places? A little off, Andy Griffith has long denied that his North Carolina birthplace of Mount Airy served as inspiration for Mayberry. It appeared to be given away, though, when fans picked up on something. One scene in A Black Day for Mayberry has Barney perusing the phone directory that is resting on the desk of the sheriff. Was Mayberry only a work of fiction or an earnest homage to Andy's hometown? The phone book cover plainly reads Mount Airy. Before Andy and Opie's show even aired, they were already on TV. A little information for you. Andy and Opie were there before the Andy Griffith Show ever started. They made their television debut in February 1960 on a different show, Make Room for Daddy. Danny Thomas, who had a hand in launching the Andy Griffith Show in September of that year, was also responsible for creating that show. A soft launch was thus technically what Andy and Opie did. Was it because of their early appearance that they seemed so at ease from the beginning? Do you recall Sarah, the kind receptionist? Her voice lingered long after we lost sight of her face and learnt her last name. No matter the time of day, she appeared to be working non-stop, prepared to patch calls through. Sarah was there at all hours of the day and night. She was even made fun of by some admirers who said she resided in the phone lines. Even though the Taylors never moved, the series presented a number of places for Andy's house. The addresses given by Aunt Bee and Barney in different episodes are 303-2 Maple Road and 24 Elm Street, respectively. Which one is more accurate? Even now, fans argue over it. Andy would occasionally remark, "That's the time," and we would have assumed that's just something folks used to say. However, the expression truly has strong ties to the South of the United States, particularly among the country's elders. The meaning was close to, "That's just right," or "exactly." With its help, Andy was able to subtly incorporate aspects of his genuine childhood, his accent, his culture, into the show's regular conversation. Andy Griffith wanted to be a Hollywood star before he became the face of Mayberry. After appearing in late 1950s films like A Face in the Crowd and No Time for Sergeants, Andy wasn't exactly looking to make a name for himself in television. But Andy had a huge catch. He wanted 50% ownership when Sheldon Leonard and Danny Thomas approached him about a new program. It was daring, but they were on board. He gained more than just stardom from that arrangement. He also gained authority and creative freedom. Kobe Ruskin, an early filmmaker, had his career all but destroyed due to political maneuvering rather than poor work. Red Channels, a publication that circulated during the Cold War scare of the 1950s, falsely accused him of having communist sympathies. Back then, the rumor might ruin a career. He fled to England in search of employment after being banned from Hollywood. The assertion turned out to be unfounded. Thankfully, years later, you most likely weren't expecting to see Captain Kirk aimlessly about Mayberry, yet there he was. Midway through the 1960s, Star Trek premiered on a modest budget. The Mayberry Town Square was one of several sets that were used for certain sequences in an effort to cut costs. While Kirk and Edith Keeler are strolling around New York in episodes Miri and City on the Edge of Forever, you can make out Floyd's barber shop, Walker's drugstore, and even the courthouse in the backdrop. It's crazy to imagine that Starfleet was actually roaming the streets that Sheriff Taylor was. Andy Griffith was said to have had a net worth of about $35 million when he died in 2012. A man with a strong accent and a passion for storytelling who began his journey in rural North Carolina has amassed quite a fortune. Andy, though, was more than simply a clever guy. He was one. His wealth steadily increased over the years because, to his ownership stake in the program, its enduring repeats, and his devoted audience. Who would have thought that behind the warm Mayberry grin was so much money? Have any of these taken you by surprise? Feel free to share your favorite moment from the program and tell us which one caught you off guard. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel if you enjoyed this video. While you're here, feel free to watch the video that appears after this one.